Hi, I've been waiting for you. You've just clicked on the Just Do the Damn Thing podcast. My name is Angie, and welcome to a brand new episode. Before we jump in, though, I believe it's important to set a clear intention for anything that we do in life. I want to explain to you the intention behind this podcast. Whilst I'm not a licensed therapist or a counselor, what I do have is my own lived life experience. I have been through many ups and downs in life, and I've had to overcome quite a bit during that time. I've also learned to get stronger and more confident in my life and the decisions that I've made. I have been asked by friends, family, and strangers who have been impacted by my story to share it with other people. And that's how I started this podcast. And now on to the episode. I've really struggled to tell this story because, quite honestly, I never know where to start. But today I'm talking about gratitude and how gratitude can get you through even the darkest of times. In 2019, I was betrayed by a friend in what I consider quite a major way. It wasn't having an affair with someone I was seeing or stealing or anything like that. But I had moved to Dallas on the understanding that once I had finished my unpaid month-long flight attendant training, I would go and stay with this friend. And this friend wasn't any old friend. This friend was somebody that I had known and spent time with and was ingratiated in my family from when I lived in London. And it was ironic that both she and I had found ourselves in America. I was living in Florida. She was living in Dallas. I was doing my flight attendant training in Dallas. I had visited her a couple of times that same year in 2019. It made the perfect sense that I would ask her if I could go and stay with her. And so she replied yes. And my ex-husband was moving to Dallas. And so it made perfect sense for my daughter to stay with her dad until I completed the flight attendant training. My main issue was, what was I going to do after a month of not being paid in terms of accommodation? Didn't make sense. I knew I wouldn't be able to pay for accommodation if I hadn't been earning an income. My house in Florida was being rented out because I hadn't decided yet whether Dallas was going to be my home, because I was trying to figure things out. So I came to Dallas on the understanding that when I got out of flight attendant training, I would be going to spend time with my friend until I got paid and I could figure out what to do about accommodation. So off I go to flight attendant training. Everything's great. My friend wishes me well. She sends me off prior with a lovely brunch, and we're chatting it up throughout the flight attendant training. She kind of goes a bit quiet in the middle of my flight attendant training, pops up again when I ask her if she can attend my graduation ceremony. And then the day before the ceremony, she tells me she's not going to be able to make it. And I smell a rat, but I just didn't have the energy to go back and forth about it. I am asked to prepare a speech and deliver a speech to the flight attendants that were in my class. And I do that. And the graduation goes really, really well. And I'm now heading back to the friend's house to stay with her. And I noticed that there is just this funny vibe. She's off. She's saying all the right things at this point. She's cooking dinner for me. She's pouring me a glass of Prosecco that she's bought for me, complete with a bag of Lay's salt and vinegar crisps. And there's just something that's off. And to cut a long story short, we end up in a heated disagreement / argument because somebody from Florida has been putting pressure on her to not allow me to stay with her. And she doesn't come out and say that exactly, but she says she doesn't want to be collateral damage. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't have time to deal with drama from Florida, and that's exactly why I've moved to Dallas. And I have just no energy. And so I'm annoyed. I decide that I absolutely don't want to sit and eat dinner and play like everything is fine after what I've just heard. And I excuse myself and say I'm going to bed. Now, I actually didn't think I was going to pass out in my clothes that I had been wearing. I hadn't had a shower, I hadn't brushed my teeth, I hadn't got into my night clothes. And so it was just really, really telling that I fell asleep for the entire night. I woke up the next day at 2 p.m. and checked my phone and saw a message that would go on to be one of the most defining text messages that I had ever received in my life. The text message essentially said to me that she was not prepared to put up with incidents like the one that had occurred in her home the night before. She had told me that I needed to find alternative accommodation and that I needed to let her know what time I would be gone so she could let her kids know. I was just stunned. I couldn't believe it. This is somebody who I had known from England, who had stayed with me over several weekends. And when I moved to Florida, I had handed my keys over to my accommodation so that she could escape a situation that she was in and have a new life in my flat where she could be herself and she could go to university. And here I was, X number of years later, looking at this text message from someone I knew from London telling me that I needed to find alternative accommodation when she knew full well that I had no money, that I had no income, and that I had been completing an unpaid flight attendant training. And that the whole reason why I moved to Dallas and agreed to take the training is because I would be able to stay with her after the fact. And not forever. Not forever, people. Just until I got my paycheck and I could figure out how much I was going to be making and what to do about accommodation. So when you get a text like that, it's shocking. But I didn't cry. I didn't get upset. I was in shock. I gathered my suitcases. One of them was my flight attendant suitcase that had my things that I needed to do that job. The other two suitcases were all that I had bought from Florida. And I took them down the stairs and found myself outside of her house. And when I tell you it was a sizable house, it was at least 3,000 square foot. It had electric gates and it had at least 4 bedrooms. It was massive. I found myself on the street and I was in so much shock that I didn't even realize that my bra was exposed. My underwear was exposed because I hadn't zipped my dress up. I was just standing on the sidewalk or the pavement with my zip all the way down, just literally in shock. So much so that a woman came up to me. She'd been walking her dog and she asked me if it was okay if she zipped me up. And I said yes. Fast forward to where I was able to, thankfully, stay in a hotel for a month, and that was paid for a friend of mine at the time. I was able to stay in an Airbnb for another month because that was an agreement that my ex-husband had made because he moved to Dallas, and I got the idea to move here primarily because he had moved here for a promotion, and he had always said if I did move, he would be kind enough to either give me money to help me relocate or he would pay for a month in an Airbnb. So I had 2 months covered. But for the next 7 months, I had to figure out where I was going to stay when I wasn't flying. My home was being rented out in Florida and was under a contract. So there was no way that I could kick my tenants out of my house. And so I found myself not having a permanent home to go to for the first time in my life. Now, would I call myself homeless? I'll leave that to you to decide. I don't consider that I was homeless because I had a property in Florida that just legally I wasn't able to access. And I would also say that I had moved to Dallas, so that wasn't even going to be an option to go back. But I certainly didn't have an address. I just had a place to stay initially for a month and then another month. And then it was just erratic from there on out. Maybe I was able to stay in downtown Dallas at a hotel for 2 nights. Maybe I had to stay in another hotel for 1 night. Maybe I got a Airbnb for 2 weeks, and so on and so forth. There were some times where I didn't have anywhere to stay, and so it made sense for me to take my flight benefits and fly to England. That would give me accommodation for 1 night because I would be on the plane. And then I would go and stay with a friend for a few nights and be able to see friends and family and then fly back to Dallas and then go back to work. I cannot even tell you what that does to your sense of worth, to your sense of value. During that 9-month period of my life, I was the most vulnerable that I think I had ever been up until that point. There I was in another state by myself with no family and friends around me, only my ex-husband as someone that I knew. And I had no material possessions with me at all. The only thing I had was my flight attendant bag and the present. I learned to detach from material things and to search for the why behind what was happening to me. And I concluded that it had to be a lesson about being grateful for what you do have. And so I had learned a lot about gratitude from past years, but this was really going to put my gratitude to the test. So I ordered a gratitude journal from Amazon, and I started to write in it every day 3 things that I was grateful for. I did this every single morning before I flew, no matter what time I had to be at work. I made that my priority. And after a while of writing down my gratitude every single morning, I decided to look to see if there was an app so that when I was traveling, it would be easier for me to write the things I was grateful for in that way. And I found that to be a really, really great tool for me because the app allowed me to take photographs and have captions underneath them. And they ended up serving as a form of diary because you can see all the things that you were grateful for in a day, in a month, and even a year. I started to look at every single little blessing that I had in my life in a new way. See, I had been so busy in my old life getting through a list of things to do, that I hadn't been present. And here I was now noticing the birds singing in the morning, or I would notice a coffee that I was able just to sip on and just be thankful to have that. I was thankful to have a warm shower in some of the places that I ended up staying in. I was so grateful for all of the friends and family that I had around me that supported me and encouraged me and kept my spirits up, even when I had bad days. Those people I wrote down as part of my gratitude every time they called or texted. And if I had a call from them, I would take a screenshot, upload it to the gratitude app, and write a caption for it. And I would also write that same gratitude in my journal. So I got really good at looking at the most minute things in my day-to-day life. As I was walking back from the airport, I used to see these big pots of plants. And I would think, wow, I miss my plants that I used to have in my apartment and in my garden. But instead of focusing on the fact that I didn't have them, I took pictures of those plants and I said to myself, I am going to have these one day. And I uploaded those to my gratitude app. There was a point where when I was looking at my gratitude app, I could scroll up and look at all of the joy that I had in my life, even though I did not have a permanent roof over my head. And at that time, I didn't even know how I was going to get one. So I will let you know that I did go on to get a permanent roof over my head. And I did find a job that paid me a lot more money at a time when it was in the middle of the pandemic and the airline industry was letting go of flight attendants all the time. I was able to get out just before my job was on the line and get a job as a teacher, earning more money than I ever had in my life. And to this day, I truly believe it was because I practiced gratitude every single day. And so my ask of you is that you go on to Amazon and order yourself a gratitude journal. Get up every day as early as you can before you start your day or before you go to work and write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And if you don't like writing things down, then download a gratitude app and use that. I personally used both, and I thought that that was a great way of doubling up on my gratitude. So you always have that option too. But whatever you're doing right now, whether you are driving to work or whether you are on a jog, sitting on your couch listening to this, just find some time today to make yourself do that. Get a gratitude app or journal and start doing it tomorrow. Set your alarm, get up, make it a habit, because having gratitude as a daily practice truly transforms your life. I really am hoping that that's the one thing that you take away today, and I'm rooting for you. And with that said, that's the end of today's episode. I hope that you're feeling extra grateful, and I can't wait to see you on the other side. Thanks for listening to our episode. Do yourself a favor. Go to justdothedamnthing.com, click on the Get Inspired page, and there you'll find a number of resources that will give you the inspiration that you need to look at life in a completely different way, including PDFs that you can print out that will help you to be more specific about what you want. On that website, you'll also see all of our social media links, including all the different platforms that you can listen to this podcast. However you're listening today, I need you to do me a favor. Please click the like, subscribe, and comment down below. And of course, share with your friends and loved ones. Until next time, just do the damn thing.